Live from Emerald City in Seattle, Washington, the UFO, Bigfoot, and paranormal hotspot of the Pacific Northwest, coming directly to you, listening in around the world. This, my friends, is Spaced Out Sunday. I am your host, Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer, occupying the captain's chair tonight for SOR headquarters. We welcome you all to tonight's show, including all of our listeners on the digital side at Revolution Radio. And don't forget, you can always find our archive shows for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do us all a favor, will you, and hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to some Bumblefoot, shopping at our Spaced Out Radio store, and catching up on the SOR Newswire, and so much more. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by donating to Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Well, welcome everyone. This is February 21st, 2021 already, and we are heading right into an incredible show tonight with Wallace Wagner Jr. Wallace is an expert on the Bible and UFOs. How about that? Prophecies, paranormal, all sorts of interesting historical, ancient alien kind of theories. And we're going to be talking about that tonight on Spaced Out Sunday. But before we do that, as always, we have our good friend Peter Davenport from the National UFO Reporting Center. Going to be talking a little bit about what the heck is going on out there with UFO and UAP reports that might have been happening this last week while we were all slumbering here and going about our days, our work days. So, Peter, are you there?
I'm here, Michael.
Wonderful.
Looking forward to this program immensely.
Well, thank you very much for being here again tonight. And Wallace, are you there, buddy?
I am. Looking forward to it as well.
Okay, great. Well, listen, Wallace, you and I get to kick back now at this point, and we're going to just kind of allow Peter to take over the reins for Spaced Out Sunday and tell us what's going on out there, Peter, as far as UFOs are concerned.
Well, I wish I knew the answer to that question. No matter how much experience I get in this job, I feel like a neophyte, a tyro, a beginner. But all I can do is provide the world's population with a place to report their UFO sightings. I filter them to a degree and post them and make them available to anybody who might be interested. So I've got 4 solid reports. The first 2 are from tonight, or this afternoon and tonight. But the first one I'd like to begin with comes from Austin, Texas. As if the Texans don't have enough problems with their weather, they've now got apparently UFOs to contend with. But this is a report that came to me just before the program. Comes from Austin, Texas. A young woman writes that at 6:55 p.m. tonight, that's Central Standard Time, she and 2 people saw a red flaming, she calls it a large object, large is relative to different people, of course, in the night sky, floating and hovering from east to west slowly. They were so intrigued by what they saw that they pulled their car off the road and rolled the windows down and opened the moonroof, and the object was moving from east to west, and as they watched it, it made an abrupt turn and is now going southbound. They tried to take video, she writes, and photographs with their cell phones, but the images were not very satisfying. But this is a very good report in light of others that have come in as well. for today.
My goodness, this was a red flaming object that actually turned in midair.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was moving slowly enough that they were able to see it, she writes, for 5 minutes. And it was very unusual in appearance, she emphasizes. So what it was, I have no idea. We'll probably never know. That's usually the case with a UFO report. But
yeah, that's fascinating.
Well written and well organized. So she, by the way, was that when they pulled off the road, they pulled off into the median rather than the margin, left and right-hand margin of the road. And for those people who might be in Austin, Texas, they were very close to Bryan Hall Road, Bryan Hall Drive, I should say. So,
all right.
That's first report.
You know, Peter, it just occurred to me that not only are you receiving reports like this from people who send them directly to the National UFO Reporting Center, but you're also apprising people over the air on our shows and others that people in their neck of the woods have seen something strange, which could prompt other sighting reports, I would imagine.
Absolutely. And that's one of the great mysteries, in my opinion, Michael, about ufology and UFO reports is how a dramatic sighting, the likes of which I just described, it sounds dramatic to me based on what the witness has written, how there can be all these dramatic sightings, and yet I traditionally receive only one report about a sighting like this. What are the other people who no doubt saw the object thinking? Why are they not reporting the same event, I ask?
Yeah.
And I have no explanation for that. It's one of the many mysteries of ufology.
Yeah, that's got to be strange when you realize there's got to be other cars on that same road. My goodness.
Yeah. The old Phoenix Lights case, which you know well,
yeah,
is an example of that. It lasted for 2 hours. This is on the 13th of March, 1997, a Thursday night. Events related to it lasted for 2 hours, and yet investigators in the Phoenix area and I have collaborated on just how many reports were submitted, all told, from 3 states these objects appeared over, and it's only 1,500 reports for one of the largest, most dramatic, and lengthiest UFO sightings in the history of all ufology.
Yeah.
And I estimate that millions of people must have been witness to at least one of those objects. So it's a great mystery.
Especially when the meteor shower was happening at night to begin with, and people were out there watching for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mystery. You're right. I didn't want to interrupt you there, but go right ahead.
The next report is also from today. Earlier today, I got a telephone call from FAA headquarters in Virginia, your state, Wallace, apprising me of an event, an alleged event, I guess I have to call it, reported to the FAA by a commercial flight crew. And I think, Michael, your memory may be better than mine. I think this is the 4th report from a commercial flight crew in as many months that I've reported on this program over the last 4 months.
Yes, I think you're right, Peter, that seems like every week you come up with some kind of a commercial or military flight crew that is reporting a UFO in close proximity now. And then, of course, the FAA gets a hold of you immediately, which is fascinating that they're doing that nowadays, reporting them to you.
Yeah, I can't express enough gratitude to the FAA for their willingness to open up on this subject and see to it that some of the best data we receive is directed to our center, so I'm terribly grateful to them. But this is a sighting that occurred at 1918 Zulu hours. That's about 12:18 p.m. Mountain Standard Time this afternoon. A flight crew that was about 200 miles south of Denver, very close, I presume, to the New Mexico border, and that's confirmed by what the FAA employee recounted to me. A airliner, I'm going to avoid the name of the company and the flight number, but it was at 36,000 feet going westbound. The crew alleges that they saw, and I'm reading verbatim here from what the FAA wrote to me, pilot observed a long cylindrical cruise missile looking thing fly right over the top of them eastbound. So they were going, the airliner was headed westbound at 36,000 feet, and this object was higher than they were, headed the opposite direction. One of the most interesting facets to this report is the FAA employee writes that the report was reported to air traffic control, and they immediately checked their radar, and they had absolutely nothing on radar, which is very unusual.
Wow.
So, and one additional facet to this, I believe the FAA gentleman I spoke with at headquarters suggested that the object did not appear to the crew, the airliner crew, to have any wings on it. So it raises the question, what was providing aerodynamic lift, or any kind of lift for that matter? But
yeah,
this is a report.
Any information on how long or relative to the size of their own plane this thing was?
No, he doesn't indicate that. And in order to establish that, of course, you'd have to know how far away it is from the observer. But he also does not indicate how long the crew saw the object.
Did they say anything about the color of the object?
I think he said it was a silver color, suggesting to me that it did not have typical paint on it that you would associate with a commercial airliner.
Yeah. Oh my. Oh my goodness. This is going east, and they're going west, and it's above them. You're probably at what, 36,000 feet or something like that, cruising altitude.
Yeah, they were at flight level 360, which is 36,000 feet.
Amazing.
So this is a very nice report, and it invites the question, how many more of these reports from airline crews we're going to get? And I presume that we probably have airline crew members listening to this program tonight. And I'd like to take this opportunity, if you'd permit me,
sure,
Michael, to encourage them, if they've ever had a sighting of what they consider to be a UFO, to submit it using our online report form at ufocenter.com. And if I marshal my time correctly here tonight, I might be able to go back a couple decades and share with our audience, Michael, a couple of reports from airliner crew members from the 1999 and year 2000.
Oh, great. Okay, well, let me get out of your way and you go for
it. You're never in my way. The third sighting comes from Newport, Rhode Island. This is from last night, the 20th of February, 2021, at 10 p.m., Newport, Rhode Island. Young woman writes that she was driving down a road a road she travels almost daily to work. At night, of course, it's 10 p.m. And her attention was drawn to a very bright, brilliantly bright object. And it captured her curiosity immediately. And as she looked at it, she could tell that she was looking at the edge of a disc-shaped object. At least that's the way it looked from her vantage point. And she could see distinct lights on the underside of the saucer, which were clustered in 3 separate areas on the ventral or bottom side of this saucer-shaped object. She apparently scanned it very quickly and recognized, it registered in her mind that there were no red, blue, or green flashing lights. They were just solid lights in 3 patches, 3 areas on the ventral surface of this object. And she writes that as everybody in the car was looking at it, and she writes that as they got closer, it continued to show itself more overtly. And she goes on to say that it was obviously and clearly hovering, which ruled out any kind of typical terrestrial aircraft. And while they were watching it, it suddenly flipped such that they could see the bottom surface more clearly now. And that's when she got a very good view of the 3, she calls them circles of light, that were somewhat irregular, she says. They weren't perfectly circular clusters of lights. But she goes on to say that as she continued to watch them, she became aware that the lights were not just pure white, but they had a bluish tint to them. And they were bright enough and positioned on the ventral surface of the object such that she was able to see the outline of the object quite clearly. So that was last night, 10 p.m., Newport, Rhode Island.
Man.
And her last comment, this is noteworthy, Michael, I feel. She writes that the object had appeared to have some kind of cloaking capability, she writes. Why she feels that, I don't know. I'm going to have to correspond with her and see if I can get her to flesh out that description a little bit. But this is, like the other 2 I just touched on earlier in the program, this is a very nicely composed report. And I know you're a scrivener and a wordsmith. You like me, appreciate the value of a well-written passage of text.
Yeah, it sure makes a difference in the credibility, I think, of people when they make a clear and convincing report that makes a lot of sense when you read it. You know, that goes a long way for me anyway.
It does for me, and I'm sure it does for your guest, Wallace.
Yeah.
An author in his own right. But
Peter,
this
is Wallace again. I would like to ask a question.
Please.
Is it me, or do you sense that perhaps airline crews and the FAA are getting a little more, how shall I say it, open about what they see compared to 20 years ago?
I believe clearly that's the case. And I have 26 years of experience in this job, so I'm able to compare what people were doing and thinking and writing a quarter century ago to what's being submitted today. And I think you're spot on, Wallace. That is my impression, certainly, that people are much more willing to talk about this. And God only knows why, but that is the case, I feel.
So the stigma's not there like it used to be.
No. I think the case that Michael was talking about earlier tonight regarding the Tic Tac may have broken the ice on this subject, because if the government or government representatives are willing to talk about it, then that sort of opens the door to other people who may have seen something that they have no explanation for.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the first time the government ever admitted they don't know what it is, instead of just trying to cover it up or make up an answer.
Yeah, that may well be. They certainly have taken the position over the last 70 some odd years that we ufologists are just bereft of our senses. We have no idea what we're talking about. And yet I feel the reports I've shared tonight are testimony to the effect that people are seeing these things all the time. And good, credible, reliable witnesses who are seeing things that by any measure should not be there. By any terrestrial measure should not be there.
Wow.
The author of this report from Newport closes by writing, and I'll just quote it, Mike, because she says, "I hope people start to believe more and more and accept these beings, because who knows how much they can help the human race."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's a good point. And so far they haven't wiped us out for some reason. So there's an interesting theory on that. And I think they are. I think not only them, but I think the government is preparing us for the reality of that announcement one of these days, maybe shortly before. Quicker than we even need know, you know?
yeah, I think I've wondered that for sure. And I'm sure many other people who are contemplative by nature have wondered the same thing, conjecturing on just what position our government is taking with regard to this very strange phenomenon. So,
Yeah.
in the last 5 minutes, I have one more case I'd like to share. This comes from a hunter for a sighting that occurred on the 6th of February. I believe that was Saturday, at 1900 or 7 p.m. on Saturday, again the 6th of February. He writes that he was out on a hunting stand in, I don't think I've identified the place, Santa Elena, Texas. He and a fellow hunter were out on their stands, and they decided to call it quits for the day. It's now dark at 7 p.m., I presume. They were leaving their hunting stands at around 1700 hours. He's made a mistake in the date, I'm afraid. But their attention was drawn to a very, very bright white light over an almost empty space in Texas. They were hunting on a 40,000 acre ranch. They stopped to look at the object. They got instantly alarmed by its appearance. And he writes that once they stopped, it hovered nearby and completely illuminated the sky above it and the ground below it. Illuminated them very brightly, I should say. And the other individual looked at the object with his binoculars. He had his hunting binoculars hanging around his neck. And what they saw was, as in the case from Newport, they saw 3 clusters of lights, very bright lights on the ventral surface. And each cluster was triangular in appearance. So they didn't get pictures. They'd packed their cameras away in their packs and didn't have time to extract them from their packs. But this is yet another very nice report And this guy says he closes by pointing out that the object suddenly accelerated and moved off from where it had been hovering at what he calls a high rate of speed, without any noise whatsoever. So,
Oh boy.
what these objects are, God only knows, but I'm grateful to the people who have submitted the reports, of course, and hope that our audience enjoys them.
You know, those are the reports, Peter, that they seem very simple. You know, a cluster, a very bright white light out in the middle of nowhere in Texas. But you wonder on those kinds of simple reports whether there was any abduction experience involved in those kinds of things, you know? Because they're all so kind of pat. You know, it's like they see something, they don't know what it is. They're definitely confirming that it was, you know, close enough to catch their attention, and all of a sudden it streaks off, and no sound or anything like that. It's just like, I wonder if there was anything else that happened that night.
You know, they never know.
Fascinating. Oh my goodness. Well, listen, we're right on track right now, Peter, because what I want to do is make sure that people will know how to get a hold of you at the National UFO Reporting Center. The hotline phone number, the address, in case they feel that they might want to send you a few dollars, you know, for all of your efforts over these decades of the unselfish, work that you're doing on all of our behalf. So go ahead and give us all the info on where they can get a hold of you.
Well, thank you, Michael. If people have seen a UFO within the last week, we encourage them to call the UFO hotline, and that telephone number is area code 206-722-3000. 206-722-3000. And invariably, we invite people after a telephone call to submit a follow-up written report. They can do that on our website, which I mentioned earlier, UFOcenter.com. That's UFOcenter.com. And our postal address is P.O. Box 700, Davenport, Washington, like my last name. P.O. Box 700, Davenport, Washington. The zip code is 99122. And as always, thank you very much, Michael, for allowing me to share these with your audience.
Oh, thank you, Peter. This was action-packed tonight. Very interesting reports here. We've got Austin, Texas, Virginia, Newport, Rhode Island, and Santa Elena, Texas. Holy mackerel, that's very interesting. Well, we're going to be taking our break here, Wallace and Peter, at the top or the bottom of the hour here, and we'll be back in 6 more minutes with more of Spaced Out Sunday after this, folks, and we'll talk with Peter next week. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye, Peter.
Bye, Wallace. I'll be tuned in.
Hey, Spaced Out Radio fans. It's John Resnick, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. Our goal is to make the life of veterans, first responders, those with rare medical conditions, and 10% happier. We do this by donating one grant item, ranging from cancer therapy programs to prosthetic limbs, to those who need it most. To contribute to Spaced Out Radio's official charity, head over to chivecharities.org and become a donor today.
I'm feeling so spicy tonight. What to do?
Why not get Bumblefuck?
4 million Scoville units of pure hard rock. Bumblefoot hot sauce is coming in 3 flavors. The burning bumble, tonic down dip Bumblelicious, and throw the sauce on everything.
Spice it up. Bumble me, baby. Bumblefoot hot sauce. Get it today at kajohns.com.
At SpacedOutRadio.com, we are keeping you up to date on all the news with the SOR Newswire. Captain Shirk leads the team that is bringing you the news of the day and exclusive stories on everything paranormal and supernatural. It's free to read, it's updated daily, and it's right there for you. The SOR Newswire is a one-stop shop for the news of the day. Check it out at spacedoutradio.com today.
Are you looking for great advertising value for your company? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. We have a multitude of places to get your name out there, including commercial ads during the show, special promotions, and banners on our website. Our audience is proven to support the companies that support our show. We can make your budget work for you. For more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
Hey everybody, the SOR Space Travelers is open. For just $5 a month, you can hang out with Dave and our crew privately in our members-only section. With your sign-in, you'll receive newsletters on what's going on with Spaced Out Radio. You'll have direct contact with the host during the show in our chat, live streaming videos, and a great forum for your posts and more. Become a space traveler now at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you addicted to the woo? Good. Me too. This is Dave Scott, and you can woo it up with me every Monday through Friday, starting at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, for 3 hours of great entertainment in the subjects you love. UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, intuition. Yes, we hit it all 5 days a week. Look for us at spacedoutradio.com. We're together, my friends. We own the night.
You wanted new SOR gear, and now you can have it. The SOR Vault is fully stocked with t-shirts, hats, hoodies, mugs, and everything in between. Great logos for you to choose from. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com, click on the SOR Vault, and go shopping. Pricing is quite affordable, and you can look good representing your favorite show. So go to our website and pick up your new SOR wear at the SOR Vault today.
Need that weekend's supernatural fix? Look no further than Spaced Out Saturday, right here at spacedoutradio.com. I'm Stacey Edwards.
And I'm John Adams. Each Saturday night, Stacey and I are going to bring you the best of paranormal, cryptids, UFOs, you name it, we're going there.
It's all about the experience and to share the knowledge with all of you.
So tune us in every Saturday night on Spaced Out Saturdays, starting at 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
From the heartlands of Canada to beards around the world, we know how to take care of you. Fill your follicles with the Mighty's Beard Oil. All our oils are farm handmade, 100% natural ingredients because we care about your beard. And hey, use the promo code SOR2019 and get your Mighty's Beard Oil today. You can check us out on our website, mightysbeard.com.
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Factor, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Crypto Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strange legends and lore from around the world, relaying stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences people have had throughout time. You can find Crypto Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
Cold drinks, great food, and the best music in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is the place to be, open until 2 a.m. nightly. Everything on the menu starts at just $6.95. Who serves food that cheap anymore? At the Moose, you'll never know who you'll run into. Rock stars, actors, athletes. It's the place everyone wants to be. So join us at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Hello everyone. This is Ryan Stacey from the Experiencers Support Association, otherwise known as HESA. We're glad to team up with Spaced Out Radio to help investigate your experiences on the SOR Sightline Report. Together, we'll investigate the strange sightings and occurrences you've had. We're looking for answers just like you. So fill out the Sightline Report on the Spaced Out Radio website, and let's figure out what's going on together.
Wallace Wagner Jr. received his Bachelor of Science degree from West Virginia University in 1981. He subsequently did graduate work at Marshall University and the University of Charleston. He gained a unique understanding of the Bible from 40 years of study, mostly self-taught. He has an interest in UFO-type craft in the Bible, prophecy, and the Great Pyramid of Giza, disclosure, and the legitimate crop circles. In September 2016, Wallace had his own sighting of a white Tic Tac UFO. We are going to talk about UFOs in the Bible, the 6,000-year-old Earth theory, giants, the flood, angels, and prayer, and biblical history and manipulations throughout history. So, welcome, Wallace, to the show.
Thank you, Michael. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, this is going to be fun. Thank you, by the way, for some of those nice, insightful questions for Peter during that first portion of the show. Isn't that always fascinating?
It is indeed.
A scholar like yourself is fun to have on a show like mine because, as we discussed prior to the show, I've got some faith-based upbringing myself, but I was always the weird kid, I think, like you were, asking the strange questions in Sunday school.
Well, I certainly did that. I've got a Methodist background, a Southern Baptist background, and kind of a quasi-Catholic background.
All right. Wonderful. You've got a well-rounded theological place to come from when you ask these questions, because there are some differences and some unique dogma that come from each one of those traditions when it comes to the paranormal.
That is right. The Southern Baptists are a little bit more, how shall we say, closed-minded, but they're coming around.
Yeah, that's for sure. Especially when the U.S. Navy, the Department of Defense, the Senate Intelligence Committee are starting to talk about these issues in mainstream media.
Well, I'm glad that they are, because it certainly vindicated my sighting. I had my sighting in 2016, and a year later, the government pretty much says they tracked the same type of UFO back in 2004.
You know, that is an interesting bit of timing on your behalf as far as your Tic Tac UFO sighting, because indeed, that was December 16th, 2017. The front page of the New York Times all of a sudden quotes the Department of Defense and the Pentagon confirming that they had a $22 million program to study these UFOs, and then they came out with the Tic Tac gun camera footage from those FA-18 jets as links in that article. And what an interesting time that would have been for you, having just experienced that entire, almost exact same thing. Tell us a little bit about your sighting at that point.
Sure. It was back in September of 2016. It was a cool fall day. The sky was vivid blue. It was one of those days, Michael, where there was a layer of clouds, broken clouds, all at the same elevation. And I was delivering mail. I had just made a delivery, and I was walking back to my vehicle. And for some reason, I just felt like I needed to stop and look up. I was standing out in front of a lady's house right out in her yard, and I looked up, and literally right over my head was a white oblong object. It appeared to be solid, and it was the whitest white one could imagine. No windows, no means of propulsion, no means of lift, no nacelles, no exhaust. It appeared as a solid, white, cylindrical object.
Would it have been shaped like those Tic Tac breath mints? Is that what you're trying to explain as well?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. It was not football shaped or oblong. It was cylindrical, straight sides with rounded ends. And I saw it for about 3 seconds. And then it either cloaked or took off so fast that you could not see it. And when it took off, it did not make any disturbance at all with a little cloud next to it or any sounds on the ground or anything. It just was there, and then it was not there. Now, I could figure that it was about 2,200 to 2,500 feet above my head based on the layer of the clouds, which were pretty much all at the same altitude. I could judge that based upon certain mountains around, because the clouds were covering the top of the mountains, and I've just subtracted out the difference. So it was roughly 2,500 feet. The object was about, I'm guessing, 50, maybe as long as 55 feet in length, and approximately 30 feet in diameter. And
let me tell you right now that those dimensions that you just quoted, just with off the top of your head, with your intuitive thinking, given the fact of how far up in the sky it was, is so very close to what Commander Fravor mentioned when he claimed that the Tic Tac UFO he saw in 2004 off the USS Nimitz was literally about the same length as his FA-18 jet, which is 47 feet. Now that's how close you came to your estimate of that thing being about the same size.
Interesting. I did not know the 47 feet.
Yeah.
Measurement.
Which is fascinating to me to think that, and Commander Fravor, by the way, was within 1/2 mile, he says, of this object, because he confirmed it on his own onboard radar, how close he was to this thing before it just took off. Like you said, it was gone.
But again, that's almost 2,500 feet, 1/2 mile.
There you go. Oh my gosh. I hadn't thought of that as well, but I
believe that they also used the word cloaked, did they not?
I don't know. That's a good question. I do know that they were talking about it being either so swift that it just disappeared on them. Yeah. That's fascinating too.
It just transcends all the known physics, or at least the publicly known physics that were taught. It was there and then not there. So it either cloaked or it took off so fast one could not see it.
Yes. By the way, if you don't mind, I always love to talk with first-hand witnesses like yourself. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your sighting. First of all, by the way, thank you for your service as a mail carrier. I mean, my gosh, what a job that is through sleet and snow and all that stuff. So thank you for all that you did as a career carrier for the U.S. Mail. But
actually, that was about one of 20 jobs I've had, Michael.
I'll bet. Yeah, you're kind of
I would get actually bored, or I'm one of those people that had to have a challenge. I would always resign and go out and get another job. So I have a very varied background.
Good for you. Yeah. Well, my question is, when you were there in front of that house, what do you think prompted you? You mentioned of some kind of prompting to look straight up. That's unusual.
I have thought about that, and I've talked myself into thinking that it was such a pretty day, and I only had 2 hours left on the route, that I would just look up and take a deep breath. But the more I think about it, it was almost like they wanted me to see it. And when I say they, I don't even know what I'm talking about. Who is they?
Yeah.
But some way, somehow, I felt that I needed to stop and look up. And sure enough, it was right over my head.
Now, have you ever had that prompting before and seen something similar or unique like that?
No, sir. That's the only object that I have seen that was out of place.
Now, when you were a child, growing up, I have a theory. I'll just let you know my theory ahead of time. People who see UFOs like this, more likely than not, have seen or experienced, are experiencers potentially their entire lifetimes. Have you had anything that you remember as a child that you thought was unique? Leprechauns, strange things in the woods, anything like that that you would remember as a dream that you had recurringly when you were young?
Well, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, I know it is, because most all of us have something like that. I do, of course, but I often wonder about that because I have a feeling that there's not a coincidence that you were prompted to look up for some reason.
Well, the only thing I would respond to with regard to your question would be, now I really have not discussed this before. When I was 13, I had a certain dream. There were three beings that approached me in the dream and kind of told me what my life was going to be like, that I was going to experience a lot of highs and a lot of lows. And I woke up from that dream feeling the best I had ever felt in my life. And I've looked back on that several times wondering who those beings were. And I just can't get my mind around, what they looked like or whatnot. But there were three beings.
Now that's impressive in the fact that three beings seems to be pretty standard in that regard. I don't know if you've heard the Men in Black stories. Typically three of those guys show up or whatever, but not just Men in Black, but the small grays will come through the window three at a time sometimes. I'm just throwing that out there. But it is interesting that you mentioned that and that you still remember that dream. Of all the thousands and millions of dreams you've probably had in your lifetime, that one seems to be an important dream.
I'll never forget it. I have thought back on it several times, mostly to myself, of course. And it's the way I felt when I woke up. I've never felt that way before or since. And so that was just a marking point. I never made a connection until this very moment that maybe it had something to do with what I saw. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't.
How old?
Answering your question.
How old were you at the time?
13.
Oh my, yeah. Do you remember where you were?
I was in my bedroom, in bed, asleep.
In Virginia?
It was a dream. It was a dream.
Yeah, sure. Oh, that's fascinating.
The beings were either dressed in a dark gray or were dark gray. I remember that. But as far as facial features and whatnot, I do not remember.
Yeah. Did you have an aversion to clowns, snakes, anything unique growing up that really kind of bothered you?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, that's good.
Clowns never scared me. Snakes never scared me.
No. Did you say owls?
I did not say owls, but they don't scare me either. So
okay.
No aversions.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. I had an aversion growing up of being very careful where I walked at night because I was afraid I was going to fall into a deep pit. And I remember that for years in my, maybe 8 years old area, growing up. I always thought that was a weird thing. Why did I have such an aversion of falling in a hole, other than the fact that maybe I just didn't like the dark or something like that when I was outside. But I appreciate you sharing some of these thoughts.
Is there a phobia name for that, Michael?
Probably, I'm sure. But here's my aversion. I had a weird aversion to praying mantises. As a kid. I mean, and I'll tell you, I think either how it started or where it came from. Actually, we're gonna do that after the break because I've taken us both beyond the break at this point. And we're going to have to take a commercial break and then come back, and we're going to get into some of these amazing things that you're going to want to relate to us when we come right back. So hold on, folks. We'll be right back with more of Space Out Sunday after this.
Looking for creative ways to get your company out in the public? How about advertising on Space Out Radio? Our sales department is waiting to hear from you, and we can work around any budget. From commercial spots to banners to special promotions, there are many opportunities to get your name and product out to our listeners. For a price guide and more information, please contact us at sales@spaceoutreal.com.
If you like it hot, real hot, then heat up your meals with Bumblefoot Hot.
Get Bumblefoot Hot Sauce today. The sauce, Bumblelicious, and the 4 million Scoville unit. Bumble, we're going in hot, real hot, coming out even hotter.
Keep the milk nearby. And tantalize your taste buds tonight.
Bumblefoot Hot Sauce, available now at thejobs.com.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother Is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother Is Watching.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
The SOR Vault is open for business, and we have some cool swag for you to pick up. All you have to do is head over to our website and click on the SOR Vault. You have a variety of cool logos to choose from, and put them on anything you want. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, coffee mugs, you name it, we can get it to you. So do your shopping by supporting the store you run. Get your Spaced Out Radio swag at the SOR Vault today.
Hey everyone, I'm John Edwards.
And I'm Stacey Edwards. Together we're taking over Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio, where we're going to bring our own experiences of the paranormal and talk to the best people we can find to help bring you answers to your strange tales.
We're here to entertain your need for weekend. Woo! So tune us in at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, where we can all get a little spooky together.
Spaced Out Saturday nights right here at spacedoutradio.com.
We are scouring the world for the most intriguing stories of your day. Take the time to read up on the SOR Newswire, where our team, led by Captain Shirk, will deliver to you some of the best paranormal and supernatural news, along with some stories that will blow your mind from the weird to the wacky. It's the news outside the news that piques interest, and that's what we're looking to deliver to you. The SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at MightyMooseBeard.com today.
Hi, this is Amber Becker, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we store all of the SOR show archives for free. And as an added bonus, every 2 weeks I'm posting brand new content on Cryptid Tales, where I will get into some of the spookier legends and folklore from around the world and tell the stories that go with them. Find us at youtube.com/spacedoutradio and check out Cryptid Tales today. Drop a comment and let me know what you want to hear. See you there.
Are you an experiencer of something strange that can't be explained? Do you want help finding out what's going on? I'm Ryan Stacy, head of the Experiencer Support Association, otherwise known as TESA. We've teamed up with Spaced Out Radio to investigate cases filled out in the SOR Sightlines report. We are independent and there's no cost to what we do. All we need is your experience. Let's find out what's happening together on the SOR Sightlines report.
Hey, space travelers, this is John Resnick, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners, either live during the show or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I'm bringing you the Woo every Monday through Friday on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going all out to bring you the strangest, oddest stories and subjects I can find for your entertainment. Why? Because when we hit peak Woo, I know I've done my job. So come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com, 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, and together, my friends, we own the night.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Spaced Out Sunday. I'm your host, the paranormal lawyer, Michael W. Hall. Thanks for joining me. We welcome back everyone listening in our terrestrial affiliates, WQEE 99.1 FM in Newton, Georgia, and UPRN 107.7 in New Orleans, Louisiana. On the digital side, we're very proud to be on Revolution Radio. And don't forget, you can always check out our archives for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to some Bumblefoot, shopping at our Spaced Out Radio store, and catching up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire, and so much more. And we are back right now with Wallace Wagner Jr., and we're talking paranormal and the Bible and all sorts of prophecy and everything. So, gosh, Wallace, before we left, I was telling about my aversion to, my gosh, what? Praying mantises. And here's a really weird example, Wallace, is that I stumble over the word praying mantis for some reason. It just kind of, it's hard for me to do that. And I'll tell you what happened. This is what I remember anyway. This is my memory. When I was about maybe 8 years old, I remember going into our local 5 and Dime store in our small little town in Western Washington. it wasn't Woolworths, but it was like that, on Main Street. You go into one of the cool stores. They got soda fountain in there. They got toys and all sorts of interesting things in the five and dime. And there was a storefront and then a cutout, kind of like an angled in where you'd go into the door and open the door. And I remember on the side of the door, and underneath the window ledge, there was like a little ledge. And underneath just as I was reaching for the door, underneath the thing was the largest, greenest praying mantis I had ever seen in my life. And it shocked the heck out of me as a kid for some reason. I don't know if I didn't see one before or for some reason that just hit me big time. And I often wonder if I've had some experience with a praying mantis being before that, that prompted me to have an aversion to it. I don't know. You've probably heard of the praying mantis race.
I have heard about them, that they are exceedingly intelligent and a very, very old species.
That's what I hear as well. They seem to be kind of in charge wherever they are seen. They might have minions doing, like the little gray guys doing things, but they seem to be in charge. So I don't know what to think about that. But anyway, that was my aversion growing up. Stepping in a deep hole at night and praying mantises. Oh my!
Consider yourself lucky if you've seen a praying mantis being.
I think you're probably right, because I have not heard. I mean, of course, we all heard about reptilians, the different Nordic races and all those kinds of things. But
Sure.
The praying mantis beings do seem to have the longevity of wisdom. I don't know what that is, but that's fascinating that you mentioned that as well. You don't happen to have any experiences with, other than the three beings that you remember dreaming about, any other experiences that you can remember at all?
Not right offhand, no, sir.
What do you suppose got you interested in? It's very unique that you are a Bible scholar, sacred scripture scholar, and also interested in this field. How did you decide that you wanted to go there in the first place?
Well, certainly my sighting had a lot to do with it. Growing up Methodist and then Southern Baptist primarily, you're basically force-fed that, the earth is 6,000 years old, and that we're made in God's image, and UFOs, if they're out there, they're from the devil, or they're a delusion, and on and on. And you're taught that. And you're taught that the Bible is the inerrant Word of God. How dare you go against it? And when I would read things, I would always read between the lines. And instead of taking things at face value, I would do my own study. And you flattered me when you called me an expert. I've never been really an expert in anything except causing ruckus in a class. But I have done a lot of study, and the sighting that I had really caused me to go back and reevaluate a lot of things. Things that I thought might be true, things that I had an open mind about, such as we've never been alone, crafts in the Bible and whatnot. It's all changed. My whole reality has changed. I'm beyond belief on that now. We've never been alone since day one, and we're not alone now. And the Bible is full of instances where there are crafts involved. I say crafts instead of UFOs now, so your audience will know. I'm close to Lynchburg, Virginia, where where Liberty University is, and I've actually had a professor from there tell me that we no longer say UFOs. We say crafts. It's less threatening, has less of a negative connotation to it. So we use the word crafts. And I found that rather interesting, so I will use the word crafts.
Now, you're saying that a scholar at Liberty University literally is amenable to the idea of crafts being talked about in the Bible. Is that what you're thinking?
That's what I'm saying. It raised an eyebrow for sure, and I would have liked to have a longer conversation, but unfortunately time did not permit. But the information I got was enough to say, hey, this guy's really onto it, you know.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that because literally I have a feeling, this is one of my missions, I think, on the planet here, is that being a faith-based guy, believing in God as a supreme being, and believing God is probably much bigger than we even can comprehend.
I have said that phrase 20 times, Michael.
Yeah, exactly. You and I are on the same page here. I think one of our major problems is going to be getting the faith-based community over the hump that's coming down the road with disclosure. What's your feeling on that?
Well, that's the secondary reason I wrote my book. I'm in the South, what's called the Bible Belt, with a lot of ecumenical, evangelical people, and I wanted to cast a wide net and pull in as many as I could. I knew I was going to throw a lot of seeds out and some would fall on rocky ground, and that's okay. But if I could just open a few eyes to get some people to realize that everything you're taught from behind the pulpit, for the most part, is an agenda. It may have fragments of truth and pieces of truth, or it may be the whole truth. But you've really got to do study on your own to realize that you may or may not be being taught an agenda, and it's dangerous to let that become your reality. So I have exposed, if you will, that the Bible is really the errant word of man. I could go on and on about that, but let's don't get sidetracked. I went on, the earth is definitely older than 6,000 years. I mean, that is without doubt.
Yeah.
The signs of the times, crop circles, for example, it's like so many other things. They were big back in the late 70s and early 80s, and the two gentlemen, by the name of Doug Bauer and Dave Corley, in England said they were responsible for making them, and all of a sudden it becomes taboo to even mention the subject. While all along they're still being made, still being reported, and a large percentage of them are not man-made.
Yeah, exactly. And Doug and Dave had no clue about making some of the ones that we found recently. Oh my God.
It's a joke. But the media bought it hook, line, sinker, rod, and reel. And therefore, it was case closed.
Yeah.
It's not on the media anymore. So
well,
we're lucky that there's a few scientists and professors and whatnot that are still studying the phenomenon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Dr. Levengood was the first major scientist, I think, that I heard of anyway, that did that. If you ever do come across, Wallace, or if you want to sponsor on your own a faith-based conference at all, to try to, I don't know about red pilling, but getting some of our fellow pastors and faith-based community leaders up to speed on this stuff, I think that is something that we need to think about for the future. Given the fact that at one point, it's going to be like a domino effect. when they get to, for instance, they're so close right now to confirm the existence of life on other planets and alien life visiting the Earth. When that happens, there's going to be a whole lot of folks that are going to need some direction on how to deal with that. And if we lose our local Baptist church minister, if we lose our local Methodist congregations because they no longer believe what their pastor is telling them, we're in sad shape, because that's the fabric of our community, I believe.
You are exactly correct. Even more so, if and when disclosure happens, it will be the churches, the synagogues, and whatnot that will have the most calming effect on society. And well, let me back up. It's going to really go back to the divinity schools, because the pastors are really just espousing what they've been taught. And we need to go back to the divinity schools and the professors and whatnot and get them to open their eyes, including Dallas Theological Seminary. Well, I picked that one out because it's so conservative. But if we could get them to open their eyes, then it would funnel down through everyone else.
Exactly. I went to school, grade school in New York City, right around the corner from Union Theological Seminary as well. And you're right. And I feel it's so urgent that when it happens, those organizations, those long-held institutions will be scrambling for people that have some kind of handle on the idea that their religion can still survive that. That's my understanding, and my full belief is that religion doesn't even have to be religion, but spirituality can survive the truth.
Well, they need to subscribe to Dr. Barry Downing. He's the first, I guess you would say, pastor to really bring to light UFOs in the Bible, going back to 1967, 68. And he's a pretty sharp guy. He's written a couple of books himself. And he realizes that things aren't quite what, you're taught. But there needs to be a lot more Barry Downings. Because when disclosure happens, it's going to really cause the religious community to turn upside down as it stands right now.
Yeah. And I agree with you that the institutions that have trained our ministers and pastors are going to have to allow them to have some kind of ammunition to survive a paradigm shift, because those pastors have been doing what they do for quite a few decades, obviously.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden, they're going to be either in demand or being demanded to do something different than their comfort zone is available to them. But I don't think that they can and should quit. I mean, those guys, those women, and pastors of all sorts are like you said, the people that will be there for us during these amazingly interesting times. I mean, what do we do in politics when we have Democrats against Republicans and independents and everything? What if all of a sudden we're going to be dealing with the idea that we no longer are potentially the center of the universe here on the planet? All of a sudden we've got other things to deal with.
Well, it's going to make us become awfully small, isn't it?
Yes. And also maybe, who knows, but maybe even more precious than we believe as well. I mean, who knows what the perspective of life on this planet is really like unless we've talked with someone who's off the planet that can give us a different perspective. Maybe this is quite a unique thing that we're dealing with there. I don't know. Very interesting to think of that.
It is very interesting. Of course, I don't know whether your listeners have heard of Ben Rich before. He used to run the Lockheed Skunk Works.
Of course. You got it. Go for it.
He has made some comments in the past you may be aware of, that we've already been out to space. That was made in 1993. There was an error in the calculations, and it doesn't take a lifetime to get anywhere now. So we've got that error fixed.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, he said, we have the technology to take ET home, he said.
Exactly. He also made some comments I found intriguing, that no matter what you think, we've already done it. Whatever you can think of, we've already done it.
My goodness.
Think about that.
And I remember
the position he was in.
Yeah, exactly. The head of Skunk Works, total engineer, scientist, and he's talking about these interesting. Matter of fact, he said at one point that what was the quote? Oh gosh, it slipped my mind. Fascinating guy, because obviously this is I think, wasn't he the father of the stealth fighter?
F-117A.
Yeah.
Stealth bomb.
I mean, the whole technology to be able to make the thing so fast and non-reflective to radar and all that stuff. And oh gosh, I'll remember that quote later on, but it was quite astonishing that he says that the things that we can do now would, like you said, just blow people's socks off. They have the capability of doing these things already. What's your opinion, and I don't know if you even have one, on this secret space program that's supposed to be paralleling, the development of what's going on, and we've all already been to, other planets and those kinds of things. Do you think that's a possibility as well?
I think it's a possibility. I have an open mind on that.
Yeah.
I find it interesting, very interesting, that we now have a Space Force all of a sudden when we already had NASA. What is a Space Force in conjunction with NASA? Why do we need a Space Force if we already have NASA?
Exactly.
Think about that. And now it's a part of the military.
Yes. Matter of fact, one of the people in my chat room that are kind of talking with one another tonight says that they've got a nephew that just got recruited into the space program of the United States. So I thought that was fascinating when I read that, and then you brought it up.
Well, I've followed Corey Good a little bit. I'm sure you've heard of him.
Yes, of course.
You mentioned the Secret Space Force. He pretty much subscribes to the belief that you do 2 years out there secretly and then come back to reality. And when you're out there, you're actually fighting. So that's intriguing.
It is fascinating to think that, and why would it be any different? Space, as so above, so below, there could be malevolent races of people out there that don't want us to survive or don't want others to.
That. Yeah. I've read both of Linda Moulton Howe's books, and there's definitely good and evil out there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and of course, that's
why else is there war in heaven?
There you go. And it's totally biblical. The idea that, Satan was given dominion over the planet Earth anyway. And here we are having to deal with that. And So you wonder how that is going to play out in our disclosure of the truth. Of course, I think you've probably heard that there is a group of Pentagon white hats that are very religious oriented, and they believe that there is a demonic aspect to the extraterrestrials that are visiting the planet as well. So we've got different points of view, even within the military, I understand.
Well, I'm sure that some of the crafts are not friendly. Let's put it that way, and most are. Fully convinced of that, and I think that that's biblical as well. I mean, going back through history, there have been wars. Looking up in the sky, there's been two sides fighting each other. You think of Nuremberg back in Germany in the 1500s, the same thing.
You're talking about the woodcut, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Isn't that a fascinating rendition of what someone says back, I don't know, what was it, 1500s or something?
Yeah.
That they saw these forces fighting themselves in the sky and literally put it down into a woodcut to preserve the event. And of course, we've heard of the Vimanas from India and those kinds of things. And of course, Sodom and Gomorrah, what the heck was that all about? I don't know. If that had anything to do with some kind of a battle or whatever as well, or whether that was just God's wrath on the people. But yeah, fascinating things going on.
Indeed.
Let's talk about your book.
All right.
Let's get into some of the interesting maybe chapters that you've included that you want to, it'd be kind of nice to share some of the, I don't know if we don't want to give away the premise of the book completely, but I'm sure there's some exciting things that people would love to be able to hear.
Well, I'll start off with the Great Pyramid, the Great Pyramid of Egypt. I did spend some time over there, went all through it, measured it, and whatnot. And you can get guides, so-called experts, and they would tell you that the Great Pyramid was built by Khufu as a tomb for Khufu back around maybe 2560 BC or so, and that each of the pharaohs preceding the Great Pyramid wanted to outdo the other. So we started off with step pyramids, and then the bent pyramid, and then eventually worked their way up to the Great Pyramid. And then the conversation stops. So what came after the Great Pyramid with all this technology? The fact of the matter is, 80 years later, the next pharaoh, his tomb's nothing but a pile of rocks. And that just tells me that the Great Pyramid is older than the other pyramids, and the other pyramids are really just copies trying to emulate the Great Pyramid. And you do studies with going back all through the ages of Egypt, and Egypt is a very, very old country. When we have history that goes back 30 or 40,000 years. And that just blows the 6,000-year-old Earth theory to pieces. And a lot of this was written down, going back before Narmer, the first pharaoh, had the Shem-Su-Hur, and they went back thousands of years before that. So, and Egypt is still here. Even after the flood, Egypt is still here. And they've pretty much got a non-broken lineage, just like the Aborigines in Australia. Go back 50,000 years, and they're still here. They were not taken off the face of the earth with the flood.
Isn't that fascinating? The idea that there is the deluge stories around the world, but there seems to be survivors also around the world.
Sure. And you wonder, and I certainly wonder, did the flood cover the whole earth, or did it cover a part of the earth? The whole earth as we knew it back then was basically around the Fertile Crescent area of the Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah.
Was the whole earth really covered?
Good point. It would take a lot of water to do that, especially if you're going to be covering all the mountaintops. And if Mount Ararat was underwater at one point, and that's where the Ark landed, you would have to extrapolate from Mount Ararat at least around the planet, the same height of water. What's your...
When I questioned that in Sunday school, the only answer I would get was, well, that's what the Bible says.
Yes.
The whole earth, that's what it says. Why can't you believe it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, what's your opinion of this archaeological dig that's going on in Turkey regarding potentially finding Noah's Ark? Have you ever gotten into the details of that?
I've gotten into some of the details, but I'm really not. I'm not buying it quite yet. Let me put it that way. There have been some underground, the radar they do with the
ground penetrating radar.
Ground penetrating radar. Thank you.
Yeah.
That does seem to show something, and I'm waiting to hear more. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, me too. I think it would be fascinating that. I can totally believe that story could be true, and that a portion of the animal life and Noah's family survived the flood because of it. But again, it's tough to think that the entire world was involved in that as well at the same time. Oh my, we're at the bottom of the hour already. We got to take another break at this point. Wallace, we are just on a roll here. I sure appreciate your time here tonight.
You're welcome. I've enjoyed it.
No, we're going to have a great time. So hang on, folks. We'll be right back with more Spaced Out Sunday after this.
Cold drinks, great food, and the best music in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Open until 2 a.m. nightly. Everything on the menu starts at just $6.95. Who serves food that cheap anymore? At the Moose, you'll never know who you'll run into. Rock stars, actors, athletes. It's the place everyone wants to be. So join us at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Hey, Space Travelers, this is John Resnick, founder of the Chive to Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thorn. I have to tell you, I love the response I get from Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in this supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is Watching.
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Beckford, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Cryptid Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences people have had throughout time. You can find Cryptid Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
Hey everybody, the SOR Space Travelers is open. For just $5 a month, you can hang out with Dave and our crew privately in our members-only section. With your sign-in, you'll receive newsletters on what's going on with Spaced Out Radio. You'll have direct contact with the host during the show in our chat, live streaming videos, and a great forum for your posts and more. Become a space traveler now at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for something new to push your limits? Look beyond the spectrum. A new docu-series featuring some of the best researchers in the world when it comes to everything from UFOs, government cover-ups, and strange humanoids. Truth seekers Stephen Bassett, Jeff Meldon, Jack Kasher, and Stan Friedman, among others, all chip in to bring their knowledge to you. Beyond the Spectrum can be found on Amazon as well as Tubi TV. Tell us what you think on our Amazon page.
Are you looking for great advertising value for your company? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. We have a multitude of places to get your name out there, including commercial ads during the show, special promotions, and banners on our website. Our audience is proven to support the companies that support our show. We can make your budget work for you. For more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
At spacedoutradio.com, we are keeping you up to date on all the news with the SOR Newswire. Captain Shirk leads the team that is bringing you the news of the day and exclusive stories on everything paranormal and supernatural. It's free to read, it's updated daily, and it's right there for you. The SOR Newswire is a one-stop shop for the news of the day. Check it out at spacedoutradio.com today.
Hello everyone, this is Ryan Stacy from the Experiencers Support Association, otherwise known as HESA. We're glad to team up with Spaced Out Radio to help investigate your experiences on the SOR Sightline Report. Together, we'll investigate the strange sightings and occurrences you've had. We're looking for answers just like you. So fill out the Sightline Report on the Spaced Out Radio website, and let's figure out what's going on together.
Need that weekend's supernatural fix? Look no further than Spaced Out Saturday, right here at spacedoutradio.com. I'm Stacey Edwards.
And I'm John Edwards. Each Saturday night, Stacey and I are going to bring you the best of paranormal, cryptids, UFOs, you name it, and we're going there.
It's all about the experience and to share the knowledge with all of you.
So tune us in every Saturday night on Spaced Out Saturdays, starting at 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hello, Space Travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month. And follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come move it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye.
I'm feeling a little spicy tonight. What to do?
Why not get Bumblefoot?
4 million Scoville units of pure hard rock. Bumblefoot hot sauce is come in 3 flavors. The burning bumble, tone it down a bit with Bumblelicious, and throw the sauce on everything.
Spice it up. Bumble me, baby. Bumblefoot hot sauce. Get it today at kajans.com.
And we are back with Wallace Wagner Jr., and we're talking about UFOs and the Bible and prophecies and all of that stuff. Oh boy, let's continue on with your book, Wallace. I would imagine people could go directly to Amazon to find the book. Is that where they would buy it?
Yes, it's available there in grayscale or color, or of course on Kindle. It's not on audio because there are a lot of pictures, so of course you can't put pictures on audio. But,
yeah.
You can also go to my website, which is crossingthecrevice.com, and it can guide you to Amazon, or you can purchase a signed color copy directly off that website.
Oh, that would be fun. By the way, Crossing the Crevice, it's a great title. How did you come up with that?
I was really going to have an alternate name. It's going to be Crossing the Chasm, but that was already taken. It has to do with people falling down in a deep hole when disclosure happens, which is, one of the reasons I wrote the book, to make disclosure less threatening to people. And I don't want them to fall down in a crevice when disclosure happens. I want to pull them across it to get to the other side. So I expose so many things in this book that we could really have, a separate show on every chapter.
Yeah, I'll bet. Basically, the overall theme then of your book and your lecture series and that stuff is the fact that we are going to, or the truth about aliens existing is not going to diminish our faith. Is that right?
It's not going to diminish my faith, let me put it that way. I'm like you, I believe God is even bigger than we can even make him out to be. A supreme being, pure spirit, and that, let's put it this way, ultimate love as well. If he didn't want us to be here, we wouldn't be here.
Good point. Exactly. Matter of fact,
I'd really like to go back to the pyramid real fast, if I may.
Go right ahead.
Often I'm asked, is there anything about the pyramid that connects with the Bible? And actually, there's several things, but the biggest one I would like to point out is that the pyramid sticking out of the ground, of course, has 4 sides. In the 70s, we realized it was really concave on the sides. We realized that from satellite imagery. And that degree of curvature exactly matches the curvature of the Earth. But on each of the 4 sides of the pyramid, it's been calculated that there were 36,000 white Tura limestone blocks. Now that's what covered the pyramid originally. And there's just a few of them left along the base now. Each of those 36,000 blocks on each side had a name engraved with writing that no one could decipher. 4 times 36,000 equates to 144,000, which should ring a bell for the chosen ones in the book of Revelation.
Sure does.
And there were some earthquakes back in Cairo, and let's just say that the white limestone was pilfered to make some mosque and whatnot, so none of that is left, unfortunately. But that is definitely a connection.
Wow, Wallace, I had never heard that connection made. That's fascinating. 144,000. Oh my goodness.
Individual names carved with writing that no one could decipher.
Wow.
Each one was separate, had a separate name.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. Was this something that came across in your research, or was this something that they told? In other words, I had not heard that before. Where did you learn that tidbit?
My book, I was originally going to write a book on the Great Pyramid because I have read about every book out there, about 22 different books I've read. And I figured if I just, as a novice, wrote another book, it would just get lost in the shuffle. So I pretty much have read everything that's out there on the Great Pyramid, and with my study, that's one of the things I found out.
Wow. That's fascinating to me.
And those blocks were put together so tight you could not even slip a piece of paper, in between them. They were perfectly cut. In fact, the pyramid looked like it was a solid object. And it had a rotating door, which was so balanced you could open it with your pinky, but nobody knew where it was.
Is that right?
This fellow by the name of Al-Malone tried to blast his way into the Great Pyramid, and he missed the opening of the door about 30 feet or so.
What is your opinion of the purpose then of, let's just take the Great Pyramid, with all your research? What were they attempting to do with that?
Well, there's no shortage of theories, that's for sure. You've heard everything from a power plant to a water pump to a tomb. I'm going to take a road less traveled, and I'm going to say it was really an initiation chamber. There's been a few people that's wrote about this, that one of the Hermetic schools back then was called the Panthers back in Egypt. It goes hand in hand with the Illuminati and some other mystery schools. And way back then, to be anybody, you needed to be a graduate of one of those schools. And I actually believe that the Great Pyramid was an initiation chamber for the Panthers. And at this point, I actually believe that Jesus was initiated in the Great Pyramid.
Oh, fascinating.
And as part of the initiation, there would be fellow members of the school that would hum. And the Great Pyramid is very resonant. It would create energy from that hum. And when the bin stone was on top, it would actually light up from that energy.
Which that stone on top, what was that made of at that point? Do you remember?
Well, really don't know, but it was likened to resin. Resin. And there's conflicting information out there whether the stone actually existed or not. And one of the ancient texts actually says that Christ will bring the stone back with him when he returns. So there's no shortage of theories on that either. But I kind of sort of believe the stone was there at one time and served a purpose.
Oh, that's fascinating. By the way, I don't know if you've ever heard of the stories of the extraterrestrial Venusian by the name of Valiant Thor. You've ever heard of it?
He's mentioned in my book.
Good. That has always fascinated me, to the fact that supposedly there is an actual person that was allowed to stay at the Pentagon for 3 years as a guest of the military and the federal government under Eisenhower at that time, who claimed he was from Venus, and they literally, this guy was a real person, supposedly.
He was. You can find his picture actually on the internet.
Yeah.
He looked basically like you and me, except he had 6 fingers and 6 toes.
Oh, fascinating. I didn't know that.
He was guided in to meet a shaky Eisenhower, and Richard Nixon came in and met him as well. Richard Nixon was the vice president at the time. So
Yes. Matter of fact, Dr. Frank Stranges was a theologian like yourself, and also supposedly befriended this gentleman, Valiant Thor, and wrote some books about him.
That's the only thing we know about him came from Dr. Strange. So.
Yeah.
But at that time, Valiant was able to go anywhere he wanted in the Pentagon, regardless of the security systems. He was that far advanced.
Yes, and it was as if he had the security badges and everything. He would just show them whatever, and they just thought he was fully credited, when he
He had
showed
the
up.
ability to make the other person see what they, what he wanted them to see.
As a matter of fact, Dr. Stranges mentions that the reason he got into the Pentagon was he went in with Valiant Thor, and they thought he had credentials on Dr. Stranges, and he didn't have anything.
Surprise!
But the fascinating part to me, Wallace, is the fact that Valiant Thor was a total believer and apostle of Jesus Christ. Did you read any of his stories? He literally says that Jesus was a superior being, of course. And it was fascinating to me that somebody from off of another planet would recognize our savior of this planet in their vernacular as well.
True, but if it's like we're taught Jesus is the Son of God, then I'm sure that there's other worlds out there that under the realm of Jesus and God. The Talmud, for instance, says that there's 18,000 worlds out there. That's the Jewish Talmud, and 7 of them are actually earth-like. And God manages all those 18,000 worlds.
Yeah.
And we're just one of them. Hard to believe, isn't it?
Well, and obviously 18,000 is just a drop in the bucket compared to the universe, so who knows how large that goes. But I was always fascinated by the idea that an extraterrestrial from Venus, Valiant Thor, would recognize. Matter of fact, it was a strange thing, I understand, when he approached Eisenhower with the plan that he was trying to help the world, get through at that point. They kind of turned him down. They couldn't say, they said they couldn't handle that as a society yet, that human beings were not ready to accept those kinds of programs that he was suggesting back in the, this would have been 1957 through 59, I understand, that he showed up at the Pentagon.
Yep. His ship actually landed here in Alexandria, Virginia.
Oh, you're right. I love that story. The story is two either local police or state patrol or whatever are driving down the road, and a flying saucer lands in the road, off the side of the road. And this guy comes out of the ship, and they don't panic for some reason. And he convinces these police officers to take him to the president.
Well, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. Oh, it's fascinating stuff. I just love these kinds of things. This is what I think about. And I'm not talking about just a few people. I'm talking about literally photographs, like you mentioned in Dr. Strange's book. I'm talking about Pentagon officials confirming this through various other sources, out there. It's fascinating to me to think that this was going on in the 1950s, let alone...
The whole purpose really was, with our nuclear testing and whatnot, apparently we're all connected some way or another. And when we kept experimenting with all these nuclear bombs getting bigger and bigger and bigger, we were really negative impacting the universe in some small way.
Yeah. No, I would imagine it's like oh my
word,
word,
a hole in space-time or something.
The kids have found the matches. What are we going to do next? So, what's your opinion of the Corey Goode idea of a galactic federation? Matter of fact, I don't know if you heard this latest announcement. Of course, we've all heard of Paul Hellyer, the former defense minister from Canada, who claims that there are other extraterrestrial races out there, but just even more recently than that, the head of the Israeli space program came out and literally said there's a galactic federation out there of extraterrestrials who are actually wanting it. Some factions want them to be known and some factions don't want them to be known. What's your opinion about that possibility?
I have an open mind. I actually think that could be true, but I don't know it for sure, so I can't say that. From what I have read, we are friends with several races, and we actually meet ever so often. But there are some other races out there that don't even want us to exist.
Exactly.
It creates a conflict or possibly a war that we don't see happening, but it is really happening out there. And I mean, you just can't talk about that to the general public because you would be, deemed a lunatic. But I have a very, very open mind, and I find somehow, some way that it could be true.
Yeah, I totally agree. And with that, we are going to take our break at the top of the hour. Oh my God, what a cliffhanger that is. So we'll be right back after this on Spaced Out Sunday.
Hey, Space Travelers, this is John Breslin, founder of the Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for an endless cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor in Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
Are you an experiencer or something strange that can't be explained? Do you want help finding out what's going on? I'm Ryan Stacy, head of the Experiencer Support Association, otherwise known as TESSA. We've teamed up with Spaced Out Radio to investigate cases filled out in the SOR Sightline report. We are independent and there's no cost to what we do. All we need is your experience. Let's find out what's happening together on the SOR Sightline report.
We are scouring the world for the most intriguing stories of your day. Take the time to read up on the SOR Newswire, where our team, led by Captain Shirk, will deliver to you some of the best paranormal and supernatural news, along with some stories that will blow your mind from the weird to the wacky. It's the news outside the news that piques interest, and that's what we're looking to deliver to you. The SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I'm bringing you the Woo every Monday through Friday on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going all out to bring you the strangest, oddest stories and subjects I can find for your entertainment. Why? Because when we hit peak Woo, I know I've done my job. So come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com, 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, and together, my friends, we own the night.
The SOR Vault is open for business, and do we have some cool swag for you to pick up? All you have to do is head over to our website and click on the SOR Vault. You have a variety of cool logos to choose from, and put them on anything you want. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, coffee mugs, you name it, we can get it. So do your shopping by supporting the story you love. Get your Spaced Out Radio swag at the SOR Vault today.
If you like it hot, real hot, then heat up your meals with Bumblefoot Hot Sauce.
Get Bumblefoot Hot Sauce today. The sauce, Bumblelicious, and the 4 million Scoville unit. Bumble, we're going in hot, real hot, coming out even hotter.
Keep the milk in your butt. And tantalize your taste buds tonight.
Bumblefoot Hot Sauce, available now at thejobs.com.
Hello, space travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month. And follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at MightyMooseBeard.com today.
Looking for creative ways to get your company out in the public? How about advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Our sales department is waiting to hear from you, and we can work around any budget. From commercial spots to banners to special promotions, there are many opportunities to get your name and product out to our SOR listeners. For a price guide and more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Come tune into SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother Is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother Is Watching.
Hi, this is Amber Becker, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we store all of the SOR show archives for free. And as an added bonus, every 2 weeks, I'm posting brand new content on Cryptid Tales, where I will get into some of the spookier legends and folklore from around the world, and tell the stories that go with them. Find us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, and check out Cryptid Tales today. Drop a comment and let me know what you want to hear. See you there.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners, either live during the show or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey everyone, I'm John Edwards.
And I'm Stacey Edwards. Together we're taking over Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio, where we're going to bring our own experiences of the paranormal and talk to the best people we can find to help bring you answers to your strange tales.
We're here to entertain your need for weekend. Woo! So tune us in at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, where we can all get a little spooky together.
Spaced Out Saturday nights right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Sunday. I am your host, Michael W. Hall. Thanks for being with us tonight. We welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates. WQEE 99.1 in Noonan, Georgia, and UPRN 107.7 in New Orleans. On the digital side, we are also on Revolution Radio. Don't forget, you can always check out our archives for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do us all a favor and hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to some Bumblefoot, shopping at our Spaced Out Radio store, and catching up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire, and so much more. And we are back with Wallace Wagner Jr., and boy, are we, this show is just flying by here, Wallace. Thank you for hanging in there with me. We're just got one more hour to go, and then we're going to bid you adieu here for a while, so thank you for being with me.
Welcome.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that we're dealing with truths and realities, I think, that are probably more biblical and prophetic than other people out there in faith-based religions even have any clue about. What's your feeling about how people will be able to handle this disclosure? I know that's the reason you wrote your book. I think that's very important. Do you think we're going to be able to, those folks out there in organized religion, do you think they're going to survive?
I think the Jewish faith is not going to have a problem at all. Then getting to the Catholics, they're going to be able to absorb it a lot better than the Protestants. Some of the teachings in the Catholic religion now is that intelligent life is out there, and that it really doesn't affect our faith. I mean, that's some of the theology that they're getting entwined, now. But the Protestants are still stuck with the old dogma as it was 50 years ago. They're going to be the ones to struggle. And if we could just open their eyes in some way, somehow, to see things from a different perspective, it would certainly ease the stigma and fear of disclosure. And in some crazy, broad way, that's what I was trying to do with this book.
Yes. Well,
going back real fast, if I could, before we went to break, you mentioned what was his name? Valiant Thor.
Yes.
I just wanted to let the readers know of one thing. Back around 1955, when General Douglas MacArthur retired, he gave us this phrase, and I'd like to read it verbatim if I could.
Oh, that's a fascinating statement. Go ahead, right ahead.
We speak now in strange terms of harnessing cosmic energy and of conflict between a united human race and the sinister forces from another planet. The nations of our world will have to unite, for the next big war will be an interplanetary one. Now you think about the inside conversations he's had, and that was 1955, and where we might stand today, going back to Corey Goode and the Space Force and whatnot. It certainly adds weight.
Well, isn't that fascinating, the fact that would have been very shortly after 1947 and potentially Roswell, and then just before Valiant Thor showed up in 1957.
And don't forget Operation High Jump in between there too.
Oh, very good point. Admiral Byrd.
Yep.
Literally, have you read or heard some of the excerpts from his diary?
Oh, it makes the hair stand up on your arms and back of your neck.
Yeah.
They came out of the water.
Yeah. And literally saucers taking control of his plane and landing it in, was it Antarctica or was it the North Pole that they landed in? They saw greenery and lush valleys. I can't remember.
It's Antarctica.
Antarctica, okay.
There's a hole down there, apparently, that we still cannot fly over today.
Yeah. Oh, there's lots of restricted airspace in that regard. I've even heard of, there was a leak recently of a pilot who said that he ferried scientists to Antarctica. You remember that?
I'm fully aware of that.
You remember that story?
I honestly believe it. I do believe that.
I think so too. I mean, that has got to be the strangest story. Let's just regale the public on what we're talking about. But the idea being that this pilot says that he ferried in a bunch of scientists to Antarctica like he does normally, I guess. Dropped them off. And was supposed to come back, a week later or a couple weeks later, whatever, to pick them up or refuel them or whatever. And all of a sudden, these guys like totally disappeared, right? No one could find them for like 2 weeks or something. And finally, he gets called back to Antarctica when they were found to pick up this group of scientists, and they would not say one word, boo, of what happened to them.
They were scared to death.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, my word. And, of course, everybody is rumoring that there is a whole civilian civilization, well, military or civilian, that lives at under the ground in maybe New Schwabenland or whatever it is, you know. Matter of fact, I think Admiral Byrd mentioned that these people, these beings that they met down there spoke German or some kind of German.
Well, isn't that surprising? Not really, but
yeah,
you can certainly make a Nazi connection with Antarctica.
And you know that ties in with the theory that I remember hearing about why Germany got so excited to be able to think that they could even become a world power and take over the world, because supposedly in the 1930s they hooked up with some extraterrestrial race that helped them create these massive jumps in technology for their submarines.
You are exactly correct. And not only that, but other things as well, including rocketry.
Yeah, well, and we
if
all...
you read about some of the scientists, they would tell you that we had help.
Yeah, yeah. And, of course, we all know that after the war, World War II, it seems to be that Project Paperclip, when they split up the German scientists, some went to Russia, some went to the United States. We got von Braun, of course, but I understand generally the better rocket science went to Russia, and that's why they got the rockets that we use to go up in space.
Exactly.
Fascinating stuff. Oh, we're on the same page with a lot of this stuff. That's great.
And since we're talking about things unknown and unseen, don't forget about the cryptic text that Buzz Aldrin sent after visiting Antarctica, and then it disappeared.
Oh, tell me about this, because I don't know if I'm up to speed on that.
Well, apparently he sent out a text. I believe you can still possibly find it on the internet. He had visited Antarctica, and he got sick and had to be taken out a little early. And when he was in his hospital bed, he sent out a cryptic text that what they're doing down there is, well, they should be ashamed of themselves and it's dangerous.
Oh.
Now, you can read into that what you want, but all of a sudden that tweet disappeared. It stayed available for so many minutes, and then it was removed.
Oh my goodness!
Now, wonder what he saw and what he meant.
Yes. And what's the deal with John Kerry and all these heads of state showing up in Antarctica for tours down there? You know. And Linda Moulton Howe, of course, has done a lot of interesting...
Yeah, she's done a lot of good work down there. She's interviewed a couple people that have been down there, and let's just say the ice and snow is covering up a lot of artifacts that have been there a long time.
Yeah, that's what I understand. And I always like to hearken back every once in a while to my favorite television series, The X-Files. I remember one of the feature-length films that they did about the X-Files had something to do with a giant flying saucer underneath the ice in Antarctica. Do you remember that one?
I do.
Oh, that was really well done and way ahead of its time, I think, when it came out, because we've been talking about that for decades now. Since that thing was aired, being some kind of a reality.
Back so many years ago, I remember reading an article also that these heads of states went somewhere out to the Middle East because they found a flying carpet, perhaps, stuck in a time loop And even Hillary went out there. Hillary Clinton.
Oh, my.
In a cave. Do you know anything about that?
I have not heard that, but I did hear of the supposed giant that they ran across. Our military ran across in the Middle Eastern cave somewhere that supposedly gave them a hard time as well. Massive, I don't know how tall of a giant.
Well, giants definitely existed. I mean, that's even biblical.
Yes.
I mean, it just seems like all the good material mysteriously disappears.
Yeah.
And you can read into that as you wish, but I wonder how much of it's in the basement of the Smithsonian.
Exactly. That giant warehouse, Raiders of the Lost Ark warehouse somewhere, where they hide all that stuff, including the giant 35-foot skeletons, supposedly, and of these giants out there, and fascinating stuff. It's going to be very weird if indeed we get, like I said, the first domino to drop, and all of a sudden the other things fall into place and everything starts coming out of the woodwork at once. I'm hoping.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
It would be really awesome, and I agree with you that there is going to be a lot of folks that will be looking for an anchor somewhere to land on with their theology, and not even just theology, but their day-to-day living. How can you go to work every day, do your normal things, if you now understand that all of these things that you were wondering about are now true? That's going to be a major paradigm shift for a lot of folks.
Yes, sir. It will be. Maybe we have some time to expose some UFOs in the Bible. Throw that out for some of our listeners.
Oh, that'd be fun. Let's do that.
Well, let's start off with cloaked crafts. We've already talked about cloaking several times this morning, and perhaps the best example of that can be found in 2 Kings, chapter 6. We're talking about Elisha, not Elijah, but Elisha, the prodigy of Elijah. This goes back about 2,900 years ago. And you have this servant of Elisha who wakes up one morning and sees all these chariots of fire, or chariots all around the city. Not chariots of fire, but chariots around the city. And he says, "Oh no, my Lord, what shall we do?" And Elisha says, "Don't worry. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them." And Elisha prayed and opens the servant's eyes so that he could see. And lo and behold, the servant looked up, and all the hills and mountains were full of horses and chariots of fire. Now, think about that. They were there all along, but a non-prophet human could not see them. And what are the chariots of fire? Well, we have Von Daniken to thank for that. There's certainly not a wooden chariot made of fire, or if it caught on fire, it would burn up. It's definitely crafts.
Yeah, very, very good. I really like that. Wasn't it also correct that the enemies at that point that were massing against them were allowed to see all of these troops or chariots of fire as well, and they fled because of it, because they didn't...
You're exactly correct.
Yeah.
They got beat.
There's
so many instances of stuff like that it's just what used to just skim over and nobody would talk about. now it all becomes alive after you've seen your own craft. I mean, it's just changed everything.
Yeah.
I mean, in the New Testament, you have John in Revelation 4. After this, I looked up, and before me, a door opened in heaven. Well, I would just read that in the past and keep right on going without even thinking what I read. Now I realize that's a door opened up in a craft up in the heaven. And John was called up, and he was ridden around in that craft, looking at the sights in heaven.
Well, and he totally describes that point of view as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, that's fascinating stuff.
And go ahead.
Well, I mean, I was just going back to Ezekiel's wheel and the whole thing. You know, I mean, it's if you had to describe a UFO in those biblical days, that's exactly what you would be describing.
Well, those days, the Hebrew language only had about 7,000 words compared to our over 200,000 in the English language today. So you really had to be careful knowing the meaning of certain words. And I'll harp on 3 words in particular that have different meanings, and that's spirits, stars, and glory. They all have significant meanings, and you need to make sure you understand when you read one of those 3 words just what it could mean.
Oh, I'll bet.
Glory, for example, is one of the hardest words to define. It's a brilliant, radiant light, which can either be generalized or put into a beam or focused. So when you see the word glory, it could also mean like the light that shone down around the shepherds on the night Christ was born. Shone down around them in a circle from the sky.
Oh.
That's the glory. It also mean that it's so bright that it hurts your eyes to look at. Like when Moses was hidden in the cleft of the rock and God passed by. God, by the way, is known to walk on the earth and fly in a craft. So I will just throw that out. Very human. And the same thing with, there's just so many different places we could look for that. Elijah, for example, on Mount Sinai. God flies by. The mountain shakes, rumbles, the whole mountain rumbles. There's lightnings, there's thunders, there's voices like the sound of a trumpet. That's simply the craft flying by. Moses getting the 10 Commandments. That has craft written all over it. The same thing with the clouds, the thunderings, the lightnings. And
there's
you ever thought about the quail that was dropped down?
Oh.
In the wilderness? Where do you think the quail came from?
Good point.
Yeah, but they were dropped down from a craft, just like the manna.
Just like the manna, exactly. Fascinating stuff. And the idea being that, more than 1 million Israelites survived for 40 years in the desert.
In the desert.
That's quite an amazing feat in itself.
And think about crossing the Red Sea just for a minute. We have these lighted pillars, the clouds and the pillar at night. Yeah. And then they cross the Red Sea and they cross on dry land. And we're told it was just a little breeze from the south or whatnot. It's nonsense. Now you think about what wind it would take to remove that water for them to walk across. But it wasn't just removed, it was walled up on both sides.
Right.
There had to be that same craft involved.
Oh, yeah. And isn't it fascinating that we now are getting reports from our own Navy of underwater UFOs. USOs, exactly, that literally are traveling so fast underwater, impossibly fast underwater, which means that they have some kind of ability to deal with water and friction and all that stuff that we still have no clue about. But that just relates back to the possibility of, cleaving a body of water would be pretty simple for them to do.
It's almost like, Michael, these crafts have a bubble around them. And what exists inside that bubble is completely different from what we know as space and time and the effects of gravity. These ships move so fast, G's would just absolutely flatten the human being. But yet they do that. 7, 8, 10,000 miles an hour? Come on.
Yeah. No. It's amazing to think that we might have that capability of that technology if we were able to deal with these races. Who knows? Or maybe, as Corey Good and some of these people are saying, maybe we already have some kind of trees or programs that are dealing with some of this stuff already. I don't know.
When you think about all the money that goes to the Pentagon and how much of it goes to black projects and how much of it's unaccounted for. I mean, the Pentagon can't even do an accounting of their money. It failed. There is no accountability.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what if all this is true? It certainly makes a lot of other things come into focus. All the money that's gone nowhere. I mean, we just have no idea where it's gone. All the missing people reported. Think about that.
Oh, my.
Where are they? The abductions and whatnot.
Yes. And David Paulides' 411 series.
Oh, yes. I'm familiar with that. Why is it always in a national forest where there's not too many people to see what's going on?
Yeah. And in clusters of certain areas that seem to have repeated problems as well.
And there's no, I mean, it's just like they disappear completely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no remains. There's the footsteps. If you're tracking them, they just stop.
Yes.
So where did they go?
And it's remarkable that we have a system that doesn't even keep track of those disappearances, supposedly, in the national forest. That's ridiculous. Of literally thousands of people, I understand, missing on a yearly basis, and we don't keep records in that regard.
How convenient.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I swear.
It makes you wonder if we don't have some kind of a agreement with so many races to take so many of us off this planet for whatever reasons, whether it's experimentations or DNA manipulation or what have you. I've wondered about that.
Yes. As a matter of fact, you're right on there, because not only that, but if, for instance, David Paulides is correct in the fact that there is an inordinate group of young scientific IT people that go missing in national parks that have German descent, supposedly, that might be snatched for some off-worldly task by even our own programs. Who knows? It'd be fascinating to find out what's going on the dark side of the moon, for instance.
Well, I better not make any comments on that.
Well,
I'm not ready to make any comments. Let me put it that way.
Okay, that's fine. It always bugged me, one of those Sunday school questions again, why the heck the moon doesn't rotate. That didn't bother very many people in my class my own age. For me, I'm just going, what the heck is up with the moon?
Well, if you done any study of the moon, it's really an atypical object anyway.
That's exactly right.
The distance it is, I mean, there's just so many things. The distance it is from the sun to the earth, when you have an eclipse, it's the exact same size. The chances of that happening is unbelievable.
Yes. No, the percentage of that happening naturally is just astonishing. And the fact that the moon compared to the planet Earth is supposedly much larger than most moons around, their orbiting planets. And I don't know many moons. I don't know if there's any other moons that don't rotate. That's a good question.
I don't have the answer. All I know is that ours, keeps the dark side away from us all the time. So we don't know what's back there. It's interesting that we don't have any, with all our technology, we don't have any pictures. I mean, why can't you show me what's on the back side of the moon right now?
Well, supposedly they can, but of course all of those photos and videos are scrubbed. Even Carol Rosen, who knew Werner von Braun and those guys, mentioned that they were scrubbing videos and photos from the moon way back when, and they supposedly had, Dr. Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project says, some of his whistleblowers came out and said that there's bases on the backside of the moon and everything.
Oh yeah, there was one guy in an elevator that, he thought that the other fella that was on the elevator with him had a clearance, and he just started talking about how they airbrushed all that stuff away, and then come to realize, he was just visiting.
Yeah.
JBL, they've done a lot of stuff like that, so you wonder really what's on Mars as well. You see photographs, but they're so adept at doctoring them, you don't know whether you're really seeing what was photographed.
Yeah, exactly. And it's always frustrating for me when I see photos of the moon or Mars and stuff. The Curiosity or the rover, or whatever, they're always showing you panoramic views, and they're always in a valley, so you can never see as far as a few mountains around in the distance. They never show a long shot view of any of those things. You wonder what they're hiding behind those mountains,
Well, it might be your fellow human being.
Yeah, that's right.
or another craft.
Or another base.
Sure, remember what Neil Armstrong said, that, they were big and threatening.
That's right. That was scrubbed out of the tapes at the time for sure. Well, listen, this is fascinating. We got one more segment to go, but we're going to take our last break. And we'll be right back, folks, after this on Space Day. Hold your horses. We'll be right back.
Need that weekend's supernatural fix? Look no further than Spaced Out Saturday, right here at spacedoutradio.com. I'm Stacey Edwards.
And I'm John Edwards. Each Saturday night, Stacey and I are going to bring you the best of paranormal, cryptid, UFOs, you name it, and we're going there.
It's all about the experience and to share the knowledge with all of you.
So tune us in every Saturday night on Spaced Out Saturdays, starting at 9:06 p.m. Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
I'm feeling a little spicy tonight. What to do?
Why not get Bumblefoot?
4 million Scoville units of pure hard rock. Bumblefoot hot sauce come in 3 flavors. The burning bumble, tone it down a bit with Bumble-licious, and throw the sauce on everything.
Spice it up. Bumble me, baby. Bumblefoot hot sauce. Get it today at kajanas.com.
Are you looking for great advertising value for your company? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. We have a multitude of places to get your name out there, including commercial ads during the show, special promotions and banners on our website. Our audience is driven to support the companies that support our show. We can make your budget work for you. For more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
Hey everybody, the SOR Space Travelers is open. For just $5 a month, you can hang out with Dave and our crew privately in our members-only section. With your sign-up, you'll receive newsletters on what's going on with Space Out Radio. You'll have direct contact with the host during the show in our chat, live streaming videos, and a great forum for your posts and more. Become a space traveler now at spacedoutradio.com.
You wanted new SOR gear, and now you can have it. The SOR Vault is fully stocked with t-shirts, hats, hoodies, mugs, and everything in between. Great logos for you to choose from. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com, click on the SOR Vault, and go shopping. Pricing is quite affordable, and you can look good representing your favorite show. So go to our website and pick up your new SOR wear at the SOR Vault today.
Are you addicted to the woo? Good. Me too. This is Dave Scott, and you can woo it up with me every Monday through Friday, starting at 9:06 Pacific, 12:06 a.m. Eastern, for 3 hours of great entertainment in the subjects you love. UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, intuition. Yes, we hit it all 5 days a week. Look for us at spacedoutradio.com, where together, my friends, we own the night.
At spacedoutradio.com, we are keeping you up to date on all the news with the SOR Newswire. Captain Shirk leads the team that is bringing you the news of the day and exclusive stories on everything paranormal and supernatural. It's free to read, it's updated daily, and it's right there for you. The SOR Newswire is a one-stop shop for the news of the day. Check it out at spacedoutradio.com today.
Hello everyone, this is Ryan Stacy from the Experiencers Support Association, otherwise known as HESA. We're glad to team up with Spaced Out Radio to help investigate your experiences on the SOR Sightline Report. Together, we'll investigate the strange sightings and occurrences you've had. We're looking for answers just like you. So fill out the Sightline Report on the Spaced Out Radio website, and let's figure out what's going on together.
Hey Spaced Out Radio fans! It's John Resnick, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. Our goal is to make the life of veterans, first responders, and those with rare medical conditions 10% happier. We do this by donating one grant item, ranging from dance to therapy programs to prosthetic limbs, to those who need it most. To contribute to Spaced Out Radio's official charity, head over to chivecharities.org and become a donor today.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thorn. And I have to tell you, I love the response I get from Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
From the heartlands of Canada to beards around the world, we know how to take care of you. Fill your follicles with the mighty spirit oil. All our oils and balms are handmade and 100% natural ingredients because we care about your beard. And hey, use the promo code SOR2019 and get your mighty moose beard oil today. You can check us out on our website, mightymoosebeard.com.
We're adding to the entertainment online for Spaced Out Radio. I'm Amber Ducker, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Crypto Tales, where I will take you on a journey into some of the strangest legends and lore from around the world, relaying stories to you of the strange creatures and experiences that people have had throughout time. You can find Crypto Tales at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, don't forget to check out our free archives and leave a comment. See you there.
And we are back with our final segment of Spaced Out Sunday here for February 21st, 2021. And we are here with Wallace Wagner Jr. You know, Wallace, at this segment of the show, I always like to ask my guests what we haven't talked about that we would like, or you would like to make sure that we got out regarding the subject matter of your book, your lectures. What have we not talked about that you normally like to get out for us?
Well, let's see. Let's touch on crop circles again real fast.
Oh, good point.
There are people out there that are studying them right now. Real ones have their own attributes. For example, there's instances of lost time. There's magnetic abnormalities. And there's a sense of electricity being in the air if you step inside a real one. Now, there's several ways to tell a real one from a fake one. The best way is, let's take canola, for example. Canola is a lot like celery, fresh celery. You can only bend it so much and it snaps. Well, canola is the same way. On a real crop circle in canola, the stalks are bent as much as 90 degrees without breaking. Furthermore, the heads or the flowers are not destroyed. Now, if humans went in there to bake a crop circle and started stamping down the stalks, they would all snap off. Not only that, you would end up with a field of mush because the flower heads are so delicate that as soon as you hit them on the ground, they're destroyed. So you have a real crop circle that doesn't destroy any of that and doesn't even break the stalks, versus a man-made crop circle that destroys the stalks and the flower heads, let alone the trails going out there to make it. A lot of these crop circles you really have to think about. They've shown up in virtually every country, but about 80% of them are in England, and I do not have the answer as to why. But if you compare England to the United States, the population density is about 8 times that than what we have here in the States, which means you'll have, an 800% greater chance of being found out for making a crop circle. And the people that try to make these, they have to go out at night with helmet lights and whatnot, and they have their cars parked, and they have to trounce out in the fields and try to stamp in the field something that they pre-designed, in a room before they even went out there. And that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. These real crop circles can appear in seconds. There's been instances where a pilot flies over a field and there's nothing there. 30 minutes later, he's flying back home. There's a crop circle, and it's within a mile of a town, and nobody's even seen it. I mean, it just appears. And there's so much we can learn from it. It's not a taboo subject, and I think it certainly warrants a lot more scientific study. On the other hand, also believe that we touched on prophecy. There are several verses, as you know, that say there'll be signs in the heavens and on the earth. I honestly believe this is a sign, but nobody's paying attention.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating stuff. You're right. I think you've probably seen those videos of supposedly, there's one that I'm specifically remembering of a crop circle being made.
I have seen that with an orb. You're exactly correct. It just takes seconds to make one.
Yeah. And all of a sudden,
in fact, it's the microwave energy. It's another way you can tell if it's a real one, because the energy is greater in the middle, and you lose that energy as you go to the outside circumference. And it's reminiscent of a heated ball of light with microwave energy, emits energy and heat, which causes some of these nodes in these stems to actually burst. The liquid in there just is instantly boiled and has to escape under pressure.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Dr. Levengood was the guy I remember talking about those expanding nodes, creating the bend of the stalk without killing it. You mentioned that earlier. What do you suppose are the reason they're making these crop circles? Do you suppose they're trying to communicate with us something, or are they just artwork?
Well, I wish I had the answer to that.
Yeah.
I don't. Why are most of them in England?
Right.
They're not all there, but most of them are. And, fractals, yes. Designs that we don't understand, or is there a hidden meaning that we're missing the whole point? Possibly. There is what happened at Chilbolton with the alien face and the disc. That's actually on the back cover of my book.
Oh.
That appeared overnight. I mean, could you imagine how many people it would take? And then there's the big one that was at Mars Hill back in 2001 called the Galaxy. It's somewhere between 740 and 780 feet in diameter. And they're individual circles with no lines, by the way, and the circles are not even attached. So you have all these separate circles that are made definitely from the air, and the only way you could even see that crop circle was from the air. It's just amazing. And it just seems like nobody's paying any attention. We worry about having our 4 bars on our cell phone. We do worry about that.
You're right. Do you remember the response to the Arecibo message in crop circle?
Yeah, I do, actually.
That was a fascinating...
I think it makes you think that maybe there's a little more to silicon than what we had imagined. It's right up there, maybe able to sustain life. And we sent out a figure of a human at what, was 6 feet, and we got one back 3 feet.
Yeah, it was a very, very similar. In other words, for people that don't know, when we put the Arecibo message out, I guess it was Carl Sagan and some of these guys
Carl Sagan
came up with the idea of putting symbols in computer language that would simulate what a human being would be like and all that kind of stuff, and code, and then all of a sudden someplace in England, I guess it was, that they got a response in a crop circle that was supposedly very similar but not quite similar to the Arecibo message, and it showed an alien life form rather than a human life form. It's kind of substituted on there from kind of like this saying, well, hi, yeah, we're here. That was fascinating.
I have that on page 133 in my book, actually, all that information. It was very interesting.
Oh, good for you. I mean, that to me is kind of crazy when they're responding to something, obviously that is important to us to send out into space, and they're sending it back.
Exactly. Corrected, I must say.
Amended.
Amended, yes, amended.
Oh my. Giving you a little bit of information maybe about themselves and that kind of stuff. So, well, this has been great for me. to be able to spend some time with a scholar like yourself who is into the strange and paranormal as well as the spiritual and the biblical as well, because there's not a lot of folks out there that can discuss these things with a high level of sophistication like you can, and I really appreciate this.
I tell you, it's really enhanced my faith instead of destroying it.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some people that would say after reading my book that you're diminishing God, or that you're a Bible destroyer and whatnot. And my response is, no, Jesus taught honesty. I'm just being honest. You need to reevaluate what you're reading. For example, the word spirit. Think of spirit. It sometimes can mean a craft. Zechariah says this verbatim. When John the Baptist was baptizing Jesus, the Spirit came down from heaven. You can't see a spirit if you think of a spirit per se. I mean, there's no dimensions. You're looking right through it. This was a craft which contained Yahweh, and Yahweh spoke.
Good point.
It goes on and on through the whole Bible like that, and it has made God, as what we have said, even bigger for me.
Yeah. No, indeed. If we're talking about our small solar system within one Milky Way galaxy, and as we've noted, behind you on your green screen, you have got the Hubble deep field photo behind you showing not just stars, but multiple thousands of galaxies behind you in one sliver of a photograph. I thought that was fascinating that you used that as your green screen tonight.
It's I think just a foretaste of things to come. Wait till the James Webb Telescope gets in operation.
Okay.
Maybe it will be later this year, but it will be 100 times more powerful than Hubble, and it will operate in the infrared spectrum. So we're going to see a lot more than what we have seen to date.
Oh my. I had not been up to speed in that regard, so this is coming down very shortly, it sounds like, that capability.
It's been delayed a little bit, but I'm hoping that it will be out there maybe by late fall.
What have you kept up with this Oumuamua?
I have.
The idea that even Harvard astronomers now are claiming that it's possible it could have been an extraterrestrial craft visiting our solar system.
Even some of his colleagues are turning on them, but it's interesting that Oumuamua sped up, and we don't know why or how. That's what raises the red flag for me.
Yeah, it comes in from outside of our solar system, zips around our sun, makes a loop around the sun,
right?
And then it accelerates
when it should not have.
Oh, that's great stuff.
I wonder who's checking us out.
Yeah. And the fact that they would even allow Harvard astronomers to speculate in that regard, I thought that was quite a new thing for mainstream media to discuss at that time. I think this was, a year ago, October, or something like that?
I believe so. I believe you're right.
Yeah, and that was a big turning point for me, I thought. The fact that they would even allow major institutions like Harvard to even go there and make that potential surmise when we're talking
There are
about...
some who agree. I mean, it is still an unknown. It's awful easy to say it was just a space rock.
Yeah.
It's too easy.
let alone the Black Knight.
Black Knight satellite, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. That kind of thing.
That is very interesting.
And what the heck?
In fact, I'm writing a follow-up book, Michael, so your listeners will know. Hope to have it out by next Christmas.
Oh.
And in the appendix, it's funny you mentioned that, I'm putting the Apocalypse of Baruch, which is one of the books which did not make it into the Bible. And that is the book which many people feel refer to that satellite.
Oh, my. Oh, that's interesting. That's extra biblical canon that didn't make it into the book of the Bible. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's one of the many books that were out there. It just didn't meet the qualifications to be included.
Yeah.
But this Black Knight satellite, apparently, we don't know where it came from, who made it, why it's there, and on and on.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating stuff. Well, again, like I said, we have got to stay in touch, you and I think, because of disclosure that's going to happen, I believe, and could be happening faster than we think. And I think at one point there's going to be some need for your expertise in dealing with the faith-based believers of the world and getting them over the paradigm shift. I really think that you're in a wonderful position with your book and with your knowledge and your studies. So keep up the great work.
Thank you, Michael. I was hoping I found a niche, when I wrote the book. And anyway, the second book will be a follow-up.
Good.
Going off in some different directions, a little more spiritual.
Got any titles you're throwing around yet?
Probably Within Grasp.
Oh, I like it.
Getting closer to the other side.
Within the grasp, or just
within grasp.
Within grasp. I like it.
So the first book, Crossing the Crevice, and then the second book will be Within Grasp.
Oh, very nice. Kind of a transition book. I like it.
Yeah.
And then you got to come up with a final trilogy at one point.
I haven't gone that far yet.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. Don't worry. Oh, my word. Well, any other, do you have a website that we need to send people to if they want to learn a little bit more about you and your work?
www.crossingthecrevice, just like the name of the book.com.
Wonderful.
It'll fill you in all about the book and some of my upcoming schedule. And you can also buy the book from there, or you can also go to Amazon from there.
Oh, wonderful. Do you have any, I know the COVID thing is slowing a lot of us down. Do you have any conferences or any appearances that will be coming up in the future for us?
Not actual appearances. I will be on some other radio programs.
Oh, good. So people
coming up in the next 6 or 8 weeks.
People can go to your website and get your schedule there. And
yep.
Can they contact you via email or text message during that site as well?
Well, I do have a valid email address with the same title. It's Crossing the Crevice at Shentel. That's spelled SHENTEL.net. Crossing the Crevice at Shentel.net. And I do monitor that once or twice a day.
Wonderful. All right. Well, Wallace Wagner Jr., thank you so much for the time that you spent with us tonight. I know you're on the you're way out there in the different time zone on the East Coast, so thank you for being so generous with your time with us.
I've enjoyed it immensely, Michael. It's been great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have yourself a good rest of the evening. Get some rest, and we will have to definitely do this again. And if new developments come up between now and then with disclosure, you and I might be talking as well. Sure.
I would enjoy that.
Yeah. All right.
Been my pleasure.
Thank you very much. We will talk to you later.
Okay.
Good night.
Once was a man who lived in land east of Washington. On his land, this man he had a deep dark hole upon. People came from miles around to throw their trash down in to see how deep the hole was and listen for its end. Then the day that they pervaded for smell of his land. They made on descending down under with the plan. They had bells all uncovered it up so never could be found. So no one will ever know what's deep down in the earth's ground.
Well, I want to remind everyone that Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. You can find out more information and music at bumblefoot.com. A special thanks to everyone listening in at home, in your cars and at work, and in the chat rooms wherever you are around the world. Remember, this show is currently copyrighted by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thanks for sharing your evening with us, folks, because together, my friends, we own the night. Good night, everyone. We'll see you next Sunday on Spaced Out Sunday.